Today on Locked On Red Wings, does Detroit have the luxury of placing Simon Edvinsson on the top pair all season long?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Today, we are going to continue our player previews. Going to work our way starting with Simon Edvinsson, then continuing on to JT Compher, and finishing with our first goalie of the player preview series with Cam Talbot playing his second year. We will start with Simon Edvinsson, right? We try to start with a marquee player every single episode, somebody that will get the people wanting to listen, right? He's an exciting player going into his second full season in the NHL, although technically by league standards, it's his third year, but second full season. Before we get to that, though, I got to let the people know that this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Scotty, first of all, good morning, good afternoon, as we record here right at noon on Sunday. I hope you had a good weekend, man.
Yeah, it was good, man. I know you just got some 9 holes in before we hopped on air here, so I think I'm hoping you shot it straight, and pumped to talk hockey. To be honest, this is that mid-August time when we start doing previews and we start talking about what was and we start talking about the future and what could be is when I really start itching for hockey to get back.
Yeah, we will be about halfway through the roster after today's episode. This will be the fourth one. We do 3 players an episode, kind of working our way. We have all the time in the world, right, with it being the middle of August, to kind of work through and talk about each individual player. And we're starting with, and by the way, I didn't really shoot it all too straight on the golf course, but I just started last season, so I have definitely gotten a lot better, but my scores are nothing to write home about, but it's getting more consistent. But we're starting with a really exciting player today, Simon Edvinsson. As I previously noted, going into the second full season of his NHL career, the final year on his current ELC. We talked about him a little bit last week with regards to should the Red Wings extend him now or wait until next offseason. Well, he had a really good year at the Detroit Red Wings, Scotty. He had 31 points in 78 games played. I believe he led defensemen on the Red Wings roster in even strength points because he did not see a lot of power play time until Eric Gustafsson had his season-ending injury later in the year. And he had great percentiles, too. 69 overall, according to Evolving Hockey. 76th percentile at offense, 52 at defense. Both of those, defense especially, I think is going to get a lot better. I think he did show some wear and tear down the stretch, as in his first full NHL season, he was used in a very high-leverage role. Yeah. He and Seider played a lot of time together. He also played a lot of time away from Seider because Red Wings didn't have the luxury to have their 2 best defensemen on the same pair. So he was kind of asked to do a lot more than they would probably hope he would have to do in his first year. And or if he did, they probably hoped it would be with Seider, who, that pair has great chemistry and Seider's capable of doing it. But instead, they asked him to kind of be the anchor on the second pair. He was really good in that role, but just that wear and tear again. So going into his second full season in the NHL, Scotty, I want to know what your thoughts are for your hopes and expectations of Simon Edvinsson.
Yeah, I really think that this conversation is kind of revolving around where you think he slides into the lineup card, right? We talk so much going into the offseason about how one of the biggest reasons why you wanted improvements brought in externally on the blue line was obviously at the forefront. It is, okay, this blue line just isn't good, and you want to bring in talent. You want to bring in better players to be on the blue line. But one of the biggest reasons as to why was so that you could more easily justify putting Edvinsson with Seider, right? That is a pair that was incredible last season. Metrically, eye test, whatever, it doesn't matter. They were phenomenal when they were together, but as you mentioned, you can't afford that with the way that this blue line or the way the blue line last year was constructed, because if they're together, then your bottom 4 are complete traffic cones defensively, and you can't obviously do that over 82 games. So I think that as it stands right now, they didn't really do a lot to improve the blue line. That was already a weakness last year. So I think you're probably going to see something similar. And we've already talked about that. That's not, breaking news here. We've already talked about how if the season started tomorrow, Ben Sherrod's probably still a top pair defenseman, which is just, I think, kind of a reflection of the failure that this offseason was in terms of improving the defensive unit. But I think that when it comes to Edvinsson specifically, you're hoping for another step forward. I don't need him to be, as we kind of have talked about with other defensemen and with Seider, like he's never going to be, Cal McCarr, but like he doesn't need to be. That is not his point production is not going to be one for one reflective of his value on the team. And so I think that he is, especially once we got over and past like the first maybe month and a half or 2 months, and then before kind of the burnout at the end of the season, that middle like 3-month stretch, he was legitimately one of the better players on the team, I think, on a night-to-night basis. And the fact that we're saying that about a guy that was his first full NHL season is pretty remarkable. So I have very high expectations. I think that him, you mentioned there a little bit the even strength production. That's something that is going to be very important going forward. This team sucks at even strength, so it's going to be awesome if he can continue producing in that regard. If he can get maybe more of a prominent role in special teams, there's not really room for him on the power play necessarily right now, at least. But if you can have him improve and be maybe a solid option on the kill and be a second pair, the best defenseman on your second pair, I think that would be a fantastic season for him. And I think that you're really more so than the offense. I think I'm really just looking for him to be a solidified, defensive anchor kind of on the back end for him.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing I'm looking for the most out of Simon Edvinsson is just more calculated risks. Obviously, getting the longevity of the full season under his belt so he doesn't have that wear down by the end of the season that we were seeing would be fantastic. Maybe a little bit more physical. I think he had like 86 hits, something like that. He was 5th on the team, but he was the first player. He was 5th, but everyone above him had over 100 hits. I'd like to see him get a little bit more physical, especially using that size. I think he's a little, apprehensive to use his size at times, which being 6'6", use it, buddy. You got this. But he showed a lot of potential, and I think room for growth. You mentioned special teams. He played 30 minutes of power play time, and that all came after Gustafsson. Most of it came after Gustafsson got hurt, but he did play 120 minutes on the PK. Again, historically bad PK. A lot of that too. There's not really room for him on the top line PK unless he's playing on the top pair in general, because they usually just keep the pairs 1 and 2 or your PK 1 and 2 for the most part. And so I figure that'll be the same instance again. I do agree with you on the big talking point here that I think Simon Edvinsson will be on the second pair again, and that's not his fault. Because we saw it, as you noted again, Simon Edvinsson can play top pair minutes. He had almost 1,500 even strength minutes this past season. They
were so good together.
According to Evolving Hockey's, I know, they were so good. According to Evolving Hockey's average, that's like well above the average for a first pair defenseman. So like he's playing a lot of minutes already. It's just which pair is he going to be on? The Red Wings just still, because they didn't get Keandre Miller or insert other defensemen here that may or may not have been available. They didn't get anyone to slot in. Like, that's why I was so bummed out they didn't get Keandre Miller. Like, say what you will about him as a player, Keandre Miller would have been your solution on the second pair and given you the luxury of putting Edvinsson and Seider together. And now you don't have that again. And the difference is huge. Albert Johansson, I love Albert Johansson's game. I think he's going to be a solid third pair defenseman. But as a pairing, Aljo and Edvinsson had a expected goals for percentage of 46.5%, while Edvinsson and Seider had a 51.6%, and that's in the same amount of minutes. 498 for Edvinsson and Seider, 505. So 7 minutes fewer for Edvinsson and Seider over the course of the season than Edvinsson and Johansson. So a almost perfect 50-50 split in where Edvinsson played. And the contrast is stark. And you got to remember, too, that when Edvinsson is playing with Seider, yes, he's playing with Moritz Seider, who is a much better defenseman, but he's playing even more difficult minutes. Their chemistry was unreal. It's just they do not have the luxury to put them together. I was very impressed with Edvinsson's offense last season, though, too. I mean, I didn't think he'd score 9 goals and have 35 points, almost all of which coming at 5-on-5. Leading the defense with 24 points at 5-on-5 is incredible. Because he surprised me with his offensive flashiness. He was very creative with the puck, but that's again where also the calculated risks come in. Sometimes he would try to do too much with the puck and it would kind of bite him in the butt. But that comes with age. That comes with experience. What can you do? What can you and can you not get away with at the NHL level that you maybe could at lower levels? Right. So my expectation for Simon Edvinsson is to just be a better version of yourself. Mostly don't get worn out in the back half of the season. Be that consistent second pair, top pair, hopefully, but I'm not putting, betting money on it, defenseman that we saw flashes of for large chunks of the season. Just make it consistent this time rather than, get that fatigue on the back half of the schedule.
Yeah. And, even when it comes to the pairings, Aljo's young too, right? That was also his first full season. There's nothing that says that both of those guys on the second pair can't grow together and kind of take another step and be even more productive than they 100%. Were a year ago. So that it's not, to your point, right? I think you said it well. It's not like he's on the second pair because we don't think he's good enough or that he's being, punished or demoted or anything. It's just they literally can't afford to not put him there. And so you're hoping that with more minutes together and another year of development for both of those young players that maybe you can walk out of this upcoming season at a minimum with a solidified high-end second pair. But that's, we'll see. That part is one of the things we're looking for this year.
Scotty, in segment 2, we're going to talk about JT Compher, another middle six center that underperformed this year. So stay tuned for that conversation on Locked On Red Wings. You just realized your business needs to hire someone yesterday. How can you find an amazing candidate fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other sites. Indeed-sponsored job posts help you put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need.
Indeed it is.
Scotty, JT Compher had a down year after a up year with the Detroit Red Wings. He's going into his third year of his 5-year deal. He's getting paid just over $5 million. Scotty, 32 points last season in 76 games played for JT Compher, when the year prior he had 48 points in 77. So a difference of 16 fewer points from the season before. Again, that season before was second best season of his career. So definitely a disappointing step back from somebody who, coming into last offseason, met our expectations. He was a guy that I think we've all seen the chart that Jay Fresh did. He kind of put together a who skates the most and does the least out on the ice, and JT Compher amongst the forwards was number 1. That's not for a lack of effort. I don't think that JT Compher is nearly as bad as he performed this last year, but I think we also know he's not quite as good as he was the 2 seasons prior before. If you look at his career averages, he's pretty regularly in that 30-ish point range, granted in like the 60 games played range, so maybe you add another 15 games, he can be in the high 30s, but I just don't know if he is that 52, 48-point guy that we saw in Colorado / the first year in Detroit.
Yeah, man. When we talk about the holes on this team and what they needed to bring in this offseason and what we were hoping they added to the lineup card going into opening night, you realize how many of those conversations are just completely evaporated if JT Compher is like up to the caliber of player that the Wings paid him to be, right? Like we want two-way players that still can produce at even strength and a guy that you can put on the penalty kill and feel really good about. He checks all of those boxes. You want depth up the middle. He can check that box. Like he if he was the caliber of player and was productive if his production justified the salary, then we're talking about this roster, I think, in a completely different light. Not to put it all on one guy. You could say the same thing about Andrew Kopp. You could say the same thing about, Ben Sherratt. You could say the same thing about a lot of the veterans that the Wings have signed over the years. But I think that there might not be one that is a better example of that exercise, I'll say, than JT Compher. He just... My expectations for him this year are not super high. I think if he ends up if he at any point gets back to solidified middle six center that plays really good defense and can just be a facilitator out there, I don't even need him to score a ton of goals. If he can just facilitate to the playmakers, maybe on the wings of wherever he's at, then I will be a happy camper. I don't need him to take, some monumental leap forward and be, put up a career year or anything like that. But I don't know. Last year was super disappointing. What was the one stat where he just did nothing more than anybody else in hockey?
It was
or whatever?
Jay Fresh's cardio merchants.
Yeah.
He was number one on that.
So
yes.
That's all I had. You can go. It's just a very it's certainly been, last year was frustrating, and I think that the depth that we talk about this offense lacking really changes if JT Compher can just be closer to what he was 2 years ago than last year.
So the thing with JT Compher that I struggle with right now is he still a center on this team? And the big reason that I say that is because of the fact that you look at the Red Wings' depth right now. You have Larkin 1C, you have Casper presumably 2C, the him or Kopp, and then, Compher 3C. It's all comes back, and similar with the Kopp conversation. What are you doing with top line left wing? Because if that answer is neither of Marco Casper or Andrew Kopp, then JT Compher is not in your top 9 centers, top 3 centers, top 9 forwards in that role. The thing that Compher brings that those other centers don't bring is the fact that he's a right shot and has the ability to take faceoffs as a right shot, and that is value that a lot of teams really want. But he's not even good historically in the faceoff circle. Like, his percentage last year was 45%. He loses more faceoff than he wins, even despite the fact that he's a right shot.
That's
so
comfortable too. That's not, you see a lot of 49s,
right.
48.7, 48.8 stuff. That's pretty comfortably, yeah.
And his role is even more muddled if someone like Nate Danielson really forces Yzerman to let him on the team, and Danielson himself is a right shot center. So then you have that conundrum. You're like, okay, who plays wing? I think JT Compher is kind of, if neither of Kopp or Casper are your top line wingers, Compher is either your 4C or he's playing on the wing somewhere in the middle 6. I think that's probably what happens with him. So knowing that, my expectation of him, because you play him on the wing, he can still take a face-off for you if it's on the right side or the left side, you know what I mean? Like on the side that you need him to take the face-off on. So for me, it's about my expectation of him is just get back to being more productive as a player. Like, I know you're a two-way forward. Like, I know you're going to provide some value defensively, but I do need to see more impact in the offensive zone, and not necessarily by scoring, by, breaking into the zone with the puck, winning the races to the puck, winning the puck battles, setting up your teammates. I need to see a little bit more of that. He's going to be a PK guy. He's going to be responsible defensively, but I just need to see a little bit more impact in the offensive zone from him. But my expectation of him is more of a reduced role. Just with the emergence of Marco Kasper, I don't know if he plays center in the top 9 anymore, unless Kasper or Kopp are your solution at left wing on the top line. That's it's just where I'm at. Like I like Compher a lot, but he's gonna be, and that's kind of what you want too. Like turn the clock back to our conversations a couple years ago, Scotty. Like our dream was that Kopp and Compher eventually get pushed down the lineup because of the emergence of Kasper and Danielson. We're getting to that point. So while it is like you're paying Compher $5 million, but
why are we getting to that point? Are we getting to that point because the young players are just absolutely incredible and are like all-star caliber players already?
Fair.
Or are we getting to that point because the veterans that we did sign and those players that we're talking about are not nearly producing as much as we thought? I think it's neither. I think it's probably there's we really like Marco Kasper.
It's a little of both.
Right.
A and B.
He is great in his role, but I think it would be like disingenuous to just say like, oh yeah, like the good players are overlapping them for only because of their own doing. Like it certainly, we can call it what it is. It certainly is because the Kopp and Compers of the world are not producing nearly as much as we wanted to.
Very fair. So basically, I'm hoping for a little bit more production out of Compher, but I expect a little bit of a reduced role from him in the upcoming year. Scotty, let's head to segment 3. When we return, we'll talk about Cam Talbot, the first goalie we've talked about on our player previews. Stay tuned. Segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal financial tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use, on your laptop interface or for your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, so see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL.
Welcome back, everybody. I just kicked Brian off stage.
Nicely done.
I literally pressed the wrong button. I was trying to add myself back, and instead I kicked you off. There you go.
That's all right. I'm sure the people could use a rest from hearing my voice. Anyways, Cam Talbot going into the second year of his 2-year deal. He is, 39 years old now? Just double checking. No, his UFA age is 38. So he'll be 38 at the end of his contract. That's right. He just turned 38 about a week after the free agent period opened up. He had a save percentage last year of .901, flirting with about league average. Incredibly strong first half of the year, and then kind of was cheeks the second half of the year. Is kind of the trend with Detroit goalies when they bring a new goalie in. That goalie is all-star caliber for the first half and then is run into the ground by the second half because the Red Wings don't have any good B options. We're hoping yet again that solution is John Gibson, that they finally have a decent 1B, 1A and 1B so that maybe Cam Talbot can play fewer than 47 games. You're hoping like 35, 40?
40, yeah. No, I think if he plays over 35 games, something has gone wrong, genuinely.
Well, so let's start there. What are your expectations for John Gibson, games played wise, and how do you expect that to reflect his stat sheet?
Well, Talbot, right?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Talbot.
Well, I just want to make sure I was right. We're talking about the same guy. No, I think that this is honestly like one of the bigger storylines to watch going into preseason and then like early regular season is what is the percentage. I think that Talbot assuming both of them stay healthy the whole year, I really don't think Talbot should be playing more than 35 games. I think he should be somewhere in that 30 to 35 games played range. Obviously, on back-to-backs, you can do it that way. On like West Coast road trips, they'll be divvied up a certain way. Like, there is the only excuse as to why I could understand and I could justify Talbot playing 40-plus games again is if there is an injury to Gibson. Like, that is genuinely the only thing that I could really – and that's not because Talbot sucks. He did really well in the first half. He was actually incredible. He's the only reason the Red Wings weren't like the worst team in hockey the first 3 months of last season. That being said, he's pushing 40, and we saw what happened when he got overplayed and overused. He got ran into the ground. So I really think that this is a situation where Gibson needs to be playing 50-plus and, 45-plus, I'll say, at a minimum. Needs to be around 50, and Talbot needs to be closer to low 30s. Maybe you can convince me to trickle up into that like 34, 35, 36 range. And if that does happen, I have relative faith that he will be a solid 1B or backup, whatever you want to call it, goaltender. Like, I think that he proved. I mean, we've seen that around the NHL. We've seen guys that, get up there in age and then they go. New York is a great example. They've done it a couple of times, but like there's
Quick.
Right. Quick being obviously the biggest one. There are guys that, okay, you take they play once a week instead of every night, and all of a sudden they find the fountain of youth. Like, you're hoping, that's the hope. And that I think is a fair expectation to put on him given where the Wings are at and where he's at in his career.
Yeah, I think for me, my games played are tweaked a little bit. I'm thinking maybe 35 for Cam Talbot. That'd be 47 for Gibson, the same amount that Talbot played for the Red Wings this past year, 47. I think if you reduce the amount of games played, you see an uptick in his save percentage. I think 905. I'm not asking for the moon here. I'm asking just to be league average goalie.
Awesome.
For the Red Wings in a 1B capacity. I think the one area I really want to see Cam Talbot improve on, and John Gibson, same thing will be said. I mean, we talked about the penalty kill, right? Everyone on the penalty kill has to be better, and that includes the goalies. John Gibson and Cam Talbot were two of the worst goaltenders by save percentage on the penalty kill this past year. A lot of that has to do, again, with the team in front of them. Both the Ducks and the Red Wings stunk in general, but also especially in the PK. The PK was one of the worst in league history with the Red Wings. So it's not all on Cam Talbot, but he's also not absolved of all the guilt either. So I want to see him be a little bit better and more consistent on the penalty kill. That's one area where I expect a lot bigger improvements. But when it comes to just general game played, I want to see a reduction in his goals. I don't want to be relying on a 38-year-old goalie to be our 1A. Of course, who knows what this season how the season will unfold with that, because again, John Gibson has a long injury history, so he could get banged up, and maybe Talbot has to take on a bigger role here. But I'm hoping that Talbot can play like 35 games, leaving 47 for John Gibson, around that number, and he can give us like a 905 save percentage in those 35 games. I think that is not setting the bar incredibly high, at least for Talbot. Maybe too high for Gibson, but we'll find out.
Yeah, well, that's its own conversation, right? We'll certainly we'll certainly have that conversation when we get to Gibson. But yeah, I think if you're just looking at Talbot in a vacuum, that's kind of the hope.
Yeah. Scotty, do you have any final thoughts on today's episode or anyone we've talked about?
No, I don't think so, man. We ball.
We do ball. Hey, before we go.
Hey.
Hockey Town back at Center Ice.
Yeah. Heck yeah, man.
We knew that was going to be the result.
The easiest vote ever. Yeah, they didn't even really need to do a vote. But
well, I remember we had the conversation about it. I remember saying I preferred more, not that I didn't like the Hockey Town on the ice, but I liked more not having the Hockey Town on the center ice for the Centennial season, just because the Centennial logo itself was so nice, and I thought the Hockey Town logo made it a little bit cluttered, a little busy, and but I conceded. I said it's going to be the Hockey Town logo. We know that fans have been clamoring for it back, so it's going to be on the ice, and it's also a huge part of the Red Wings' history. So, and it still looks good. Again, I don't dislike it. I just liked the other one a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I'm still happy with it.
It's they want to incorporate the 100 in there and everything. So
the video they released, the Red Wings social media team knows how to make a hype video.
They
because
sure do.
I was watching that and I was getting chills, especially when it showed obviously the fight night at the Joe, but it also showed a couple Lucas Raymond's goals down that final stretch when the Red Wings didn't make the playoffs on the tiebreaker. But those exciting last couple games. So I got some chills watching. I was like, dang, they really know how to make a hype video.
They sure do.
So that's exciting. I can't wait for that. Can't wait for hockey to be back in general. We're a little over a month from, I think, the prospect games, and that'll be the first semblance of Red Wings hockey, and we still got
first of many Warso backs.
Yes, just we have to come up with a strict guideline of what level of back we are.
Talked about it at length last year. I feel like.
Yeah, but I don't remember last year, dude. I can't remember yesterday. What did I do yesterday?
Fair, yeah, dude. You're asking me. I don't know what you did yesterday.
I thought you knew me. All right, we'll be back with a new episode on Wednesday, same time, same place. I shot a 61. Thank you. On 9. Your team every day.